All right, everybody. Welcome to this week's experience with Ella. So for this week, I thought we would talk about why I named Ella Ella, and I named her after two famous Ellas. One being Ella Fitzgerald, who is my one of my favorite jazz musicians of all time. She's very well documented. I'm sure you all know who Ella Fitzgerald is and why she is awesome. Um, I highly recommend if you don't just listen to her recording of G Baby Ain't I Good to You. Just
Yeah.
saying. That is a jam.
Cry Me a River.
Ooh. Mm. Just
Yes.
she's so good. She's so good. Anything that she did with Louis Armstrong, all of their duets is absolutely fantastic. Um, but there's another Ella
Hmm.
that I named her after, and that would be Ella Baker. And so for this week's experience with Ella, I thought it would be great to talk to someone who is an expert on all things relating to Black history and the host of one of the other shows on our network, Bronte House, Sharonda.
Hey
How you doing?
everyone. Hi. I am excited to be here talking about Ella Baker, who is honestly one of my personal heroes, and I believe the greatest organizer of American history of all time. She just was a dynamic, powerful force who is responsible and for so many wins and things that we don't know. Ella Baker is is just everything wonderful. And that hashtag Black Girl Magic. Ella Baker is the epitome of Black Girl Magic.
So, so tell us a little bit about Ella Baker, how she grew up, how she got into the work, and what her impact was. Just give us like a brief overview of the life of Ella Baker.
Okay. So Ella Baker was from North Carolina, and her she came from just like this really strong Black family of people who um, were empowered and loved themselves. And I think that that's one of the other interesting things that you see when we hear about W.B. Du Bois or Carter G. Woodson or Martin Luther King. Like these people don't grow up in a vacuum, they come from powerful folks. And so for Ella, her grandmother was enslaved. And the story went that the slave master wanted her to marry somebody like she refused and got beat and decided to marry the darkest guy on the plantation just out of spite. She was like, I'm gonna do what I want. And so that was her story. And from that, from her grandmother came her father, who was an actual farmer in North Carolina. He owned land when most of the Black people around were sharecropping. Um, and what was important about this is that he owned the land that he was on, but he also used that money as collateral for the sharecroppers so they wouldn't have to go in debt to the white farmers at that time. So when they needed supplies, so like the way that it would work is you would need, you would need tools, you would need seeds, you would need all of this stuff. And sharecroppers have to go to white people and they would charge them all this interest. And at the end of the year, they wouldn't get anything. And Ella Baker's father came in and kind of stepped in and did that for the community. So that way, Black people wouldn't be indebted um, to this system of sharecropping that was unfair. And I
So
get
she
that
came from a legacy of fighters.
came up from a legacy of fighters. This isn't this. And another amazing thing about Ella Baker is one of her descendants did her African ancestry, and she comes from a tribe called the Balanta people or the Brasa people, and they are in West Africa, and it literally means those who resist. That's the name of the tribe, and that's one of my African ancestry. And so the thing about the Balanta people, the thing about Ella Baker's family was that it was really like socialism. And it's hard to use these terms socialism and we think of Bernie Sanders, but it was more just like like what's mine is yours, and we're in community with each other, and we belong to one another. And so that's how Ella Baker was raised, and that was her foundation. So she started out, and her first organization that she worked for was the NAACP in Harlem, and it was run by um, how do fancy black men, the respectable black men of the time. And while they were great on many levels, they were also very sexist and classist. And Ella Baker was fire. She would call them out. Her confrontations and arguments with Walter White, who was the director at that time, are legendary. And her job was to go and set up affiliate sites throughout the nation. And basically, that was just what they wanted her to do: go to the churches, go to Louisiana, go to Mississippi, go to Alabama, sign people up, have them pay a membership fee, and we can say that they're part of the NAACP. And Ella Baker's like, I'm building relationships with people. So she would go down there and stay and train the people and get to know what's going on in Louisiana, what's going on in Alabama. And she was constantly at odds with the leadership style of the Black men at that time that were very hierarchical. And also the NAACP was just like, we're going to get civil rights through legal means. We're going to do Brown versus the Board of Education. We're going to do this. And she's like, no, let's do this by empowering people. So as a way to basically shut her up, they allowed her to do a conference, a leadership conference. And it was the first organizing conference of Black people. And she got all of the people from the affiliates in the South to come, fully paid for, and train them on how to set up offices, how to do fundraising, how the government works, and all of these strategies. So that way, when they went back, they felt empowered to make decisions for their own community. And I think that that's the most common way that people define her is by her saying that strong leaders don't need strong kings, don't need kings, right? I mean, it's a little bit of a soft jab because her next job was with Dr. Martin Luther King at the SCLC. She was the executive director of the organization. And we love Dr. King. Dr. King is great. All homage to Dr. King. But he also was a Black male who was educated, who wore suits and was very into respectability politics. And Ella Baker was like, wait a minute, why are there no Black women at the table? Why do you have us doing all of the busy work? Why aren't we bringing different people in? And so again, she, went head to head with Dr. King in terms of how to make the movement more inclusive of all people, right? That it's not just that when we stand up for Black people, it's not just the Black people who go to church or the Black women who are married, but it's everyone. And ironically, Dr. King, before he died, ended up adopting a lot of Ella Baker's philosophies. So I think it got into his head. It just didn't hit them. Maybe he was just young. But I believe she's directly responsible for some of his socialist policies later on in life. And so my favorite boss move of Ella Baker of all times, which makes her the greatest organizer of all times to me, was they were doing the Montgomery bus boycott, the SCLC, with Dr. King. And then they had the NAACP in New York, and they were doing the Brown versus the Board of Education. And there started to be these instances of college students that were going to like Woolworths and different restaurants and doing sit-ins. And these were happening outside of the organization. And so the leadership at the time said, we got to get these kids and get them joined to our organization so that way we can all be on one accord. Did your family say that? That feels like a common Black phrase. It's like, let's all be on one accord, right?
And so I don't think my family ever said that.
Oh, my family says a lot. Let's all be on one accord, which basically means listen to the adults. And so Ella Baker said, okay, well, I'll organize the conference. And so she gets these college students together with the SCLC and the NAACP. And she knew what they were going to do. She was like, I know they're going to get up there and just start talking down to them and telling them what they should do in like leadership. So she lets them do their speech. Dr. King and Walter White. Sorry, I hope
You're
you can't.
fine. You're fine. Hey, we come as
All
we are. We come as we
right,
are. That's fine. Keep
Walter,
going.
Walter White. And then she gets up there and she says to the students, actually, you guys don't need to join them at all. You should do your own thing. I'll help you set it up, but you guys should be responsible and you should be making decisions on your own for what you want to do. Right? She's like, you don't need them. Like at the conference that she invited them to, she got SNCC to kind of break off. And so, and even now when we talk about the civil rights, we talk about these sit-ins and the freedom rides and the Montgomery bus boycott like it's all one thing. It wasn't. These were different organizations. And so SNCC was doing much more direct action, not direct nonviolent action. So they were doing the sit-ins. They did the freedom rides, the buses that would come from the north and go to the south. And Ella Baker had these rules, and I break them down into like three main parts of who she is, which is what makes her authentic. One is the first question you ask people are, who are your people? Right? So what that means is if you're coming and you're doing leadership, who are you responsible to? Who can you talk to? So if I say that I'm a disability advocate and organizer, she'd say, who are my people? And I need to be able to name people who are disabled and are going through this that I'm accountable to, right? And so when she had organizers, she's like, you can't go down and speak on behalf of anybody in the South if you don't know them, if you're not their people, right? And so she really stressed the importance of building relationships. The second part of Ella Baker, and the reason why a lot of us don't know her, is that she was very weary of leadership that was in front of a camera or political leadership, and that corrupts. And she would, and for better or worse, I agree with it, kind of, that once you start having someone as the face of an organization, it becomes about that person. And when they need to interact with the powers that be, they're coming in knowing that they kind of have to play the game a little bit. And it's less about the people and more about that individual person, right? And so I think that says something that we know more about Martin Luther King, about Frederick Douglass, about Harriet Tubman, than about the thousands of people who worked with them. And so that was Ella's thing. And then the last part was just, you do what you can do, and it doesn't make you better or worse. And so Julian Bonds, who was the head of the NAACP, he got his start through SNCC. He said he was a good writer, so he became the writing director. John Lewis, he came through SNCC and he was able to do organizing, so that was his job. There was a lot of liberal white college students in the North who said, I want to do something about civil rights. And so Ella Baker was like, I'll tell you what you can do. You can go on a bus with Black people and do voter registration, because the media will care about you getting hit or something happening to you more than they would care about Black people, right? So she understood that organizing wasn't just about a feeling, but it was a science. It was a job. It had rules, and that it was something that had to be ongoing. And if you leave a place, right? And so John Lewis talks about this a lot. And she would say that if they left a community and that community didn't have the skills to advocate when there was another problem without somebody else coming in, then you failed, right? Like at every point, when we're organizing, you should be building leaders. And so Ella Baker's legacy is really the leaders who she worked with, who she inspired, from Dr. King to Fannie Lou Hamer to Stokely Carmichael to so many people, not just Black people, but women and people in Puerto Rico and in the Philippines. She was the greatest organizer in American history. She was unapologetic about her love for Black people. She was unrelenting in her quest for women's rights and speaking truth to power, no matter who it was, if they're a white man, Black man, whatever. She was going to say her piece, and she did. And she was amazingly talented. This is the woman who helped establish the NAACP, the SCLC, and SNCC, three of the largest civil rights organizations in American history. And she was behind all of those, in more than just, doing the paperwork, and actually building an organization that can be sustained. And so that's why I love Ella Baker.
So thank you so much for sharing that with us, Sharonda. So I wanted you to hear a little bit about the legacy of the name Ella. And I hope that this show is a show about an extraordinary young Black girl who is inspiring her community to be their best, right? You're seeing a young leader in training, putting it into action in her early formative years with her friends and her family, and showing our next generation of young Black leaders, of young Muslim leaders, of young um, uh, Hispanic leaders, so on and so forth, uh, people that are differently abled, uh, people of all gender identities, that you have the ability and the tools to lead.
Mhm.
And so I hope that you see that throughout the course of this show. So that's our check-in for this week. Thank you so much, Rhonda, for sharing your wisdom with us about Ella Baker. Be sure to check out Every Day with Ella for more updates on all things Ella as we are rolling out this new show. We are so excited to share all these new things with you. We'll have more and more updates every week as we get closer and closer to being able to actually fully produce the show. So
And
thank you so much.
I love so much that Ella embodies your Ella embodies the Ella, and already in her friendships and her goals and her strategies and her relationships. And Ella's first thing is, who are your people? And that's the most important thing that you're doing now. Like, who's around? Who's Ella's squad? And it's diverse, because that's important, because that's what makes change. That's what builds community, and that's what unites us.
That's right.
So there's something powerful in that name, Ella, and in the legacy of Ella Baker, and also your Ella. So thank you for bringing her to us.
Thank you.